It's been such an admin heavy task to be a marketer. If you think of just the end-to-end campaign execution process, it is riddled, and it has been ripe for automation for such a long time. Maybe AI will fix that for us at some point in the future, but the reality is where we're at today, you're always going to have work streams looking at the data and improving the data layer and the connectivity of it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by MarTech Edge, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in marketing and technology. I'm your host, Sid, and today we have with us Lauren Noonan, VP Growth and Alliances at Sercante Trilliad. Lauren is a skilled manager, natural leader, and a strong consulting professional motivated to create best in class customer experiences. So, without further ado, let's welcome Lauren. Hey, Lauren, how are you doing today?
I know, I'm really excited for the conversation.
Perfect. So first things first, Lauren, I'm sure our audience would love to know who Lauren is and your entire career trajectory. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself first.
So my name is Lauren. I lead the Growth and Alliances team here at Sercante Trilliad, but I've been working in the MarTech space for the last north of 15 years. I've spent really my whole career helping the marketer better harness the power of their data, better connect across the organization to sales. I've worked across many different marketing automation platforms in my time, but have been predominantly focused on the Salesforce ecosystem for north of the last decade. I'm based just north of Boston, Mass.
Well, that's interesting. Now, Lauren, I want to start with something you said. You said the marketing industry is not having enough conversation about agentic marketing operations. And, I've been sitting out with that because honestly, I think you're right. But I want to hear you make that case.
It feels like such an exciting moment to be a marketer. I've kind of jokingly referred to it as like the marketing glow up era
Mhm.
because for whatever reason it has continued. It's been such an admin heavy task to be a marketer. If you think of just the end-to-end campaign execution process, it is riddled with just manual administrative approval tasks, documentation tasks, and it has been ripe for automation for such a long time that it really excites me that we're finally really having the conversations in a very meaningful way. There was a stat that stuck out to me recently in reading where the IDC was estimating that like the AI workflow optimization industry is poised to grow from currently $10 billion to over $190 billion in 2034. So there's going to be such a big slice of that is focused on the marketer, their processes, and just improving really the quality of execution across marketing channels.
Interesting. And so when you say agentic marketing operations, what does that mean in practice? Not the definition, but what does it look like inside a company that's doing it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different levels of maturity, but if you break apart the production process for a campaign, right? There's the planning process. You're doing things like filling out manual campaign briefs. Somebody's often reviewing them, approving them, prioritizing them, slating them into a quarterly, annual, monthly campaign calendar, making decisions about which channels are getting priority. Like that's such a human heavy piece of the process. And it only gets worse from there, right? Because then you have to decide who are you going to target? You have to build a segment, you have to build the email, you have to write the content, you have to generate the images, you have to put it together, you have to build the multi-step nurture flows, you have to execute it across the channels, you have to test, you have to report on it. Like think about how many steps are going into all of those processes. And so we have some customers that are truly transforming like the end-to-end process. But the reality is most customers are picking, like, let's pick 1 to 2 of those most manual, time-consuming drain activities and automate those. Start there. See what kind of efficiency gains that unlocks and then evolve from there. So it doesn't have to feel like this big, cumbersome, do everything all at once, change enablement milestone.
Interesting. Now, let's talk about what's underneath all of this because every conversation about AI in marketing, eventually hits the same wall, the data. And I want to ask one thing is, do most organizations have the data foundation required to run agentic operations, or are we trying to build something, sophisticated on top of the systems that are messy?
I know. It's like the age old question, right? I mean, the analogy that I use is right, like you buy a house and you're always working through like a list of things that you want to renovate in your house, and you get to the bottom of the list and then you start back over from the top. And I encourage us to look at data through that same lens. It's never going to be perfect, but if you're waiting for it to be perfect before you really enjoy it and innovate on top of it, you're going to be way behind your peers and way behind your competitors. So in the same spirit as what I had described previously, pick use cases that you have data for today, or pick use cases where the data lift is more simple. Pick use cases where the data needs to be integrated, or there's some small data cleaning that needs to happen ahead of time, and that makes the process feel a lot more manageable. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be data optimization that's going to have to happen. Maybe AI will fix that for us at some point in the future, but the reality is where we're at today, you're always going to have work streams looking at the data and improving the data layer and the connectivity of it.
Well, great to know that. Now, and I want to understand one more thing is because the MarTech stack question sits right there, right? So, because a lot of organizations today have spent like serious money on Salesforce, HubSpot, six other tools, and they still can't execute consistently. Can AI agents close that gap, or do they just add another layer on top of it?
My honest answer is if we're expecting AI agents to just fix problems, process problems, when you don't have an understanding of really what the process steps need to be, it is going to be really challenging for AI to fix those gaps today. I think it's very helpful to know what those process friction points or bottlenecks are, because those are ones that you should be looking at for improving. But oftentimes the value isn't the new tool. Oftentimes the value is optimizing the tech stack that you do have, strengthening the data layer, strengthening the processes, better enabling the human teams from a change enablement perspective, and really focusing on bridging the gap there. If you have a strong data foundation, and you have, strong or semi-strong processes, then sure, go ahead, and look for some agents to build on top of that.
Well, that's great. I love that take and totally agree with you on that one as well. Now, I just want to switch over or shift to the customer side of things, right? Because underneath a lot of the personalization conversations is an assumption that, customers want to be feel understood. But I've started to question this. When I think about my own experience as a buyer, what I want is for things to just work out, right? So for friction to disappear. So is personalization the right goal, or have we been, chasing the wrong things altogether?
I hate the term personalization or hyper personalization, to be completely candid, because I feel like it is just one of those buzzwords that we have been using forever in the hopes that we're finally able to solve for the challenge that personalization is really intended to mask, right? And at the end of the day, your buyers just want to be understood. We leave so many signals as buyers: digital, conversational, and as a brand, if you're being perceived as not listening to those signals, then yeah, folks are going to get frustrated. It could lead to negative perceptions from a brand standpoint. But I also think the inverse is true too. Like, there's nothing worse than leaving a website and then your phone ringing 5 minutes later. That's not personalization. That's a little bit creepy. So I do think there is a little bit of a fine line in between. But at the end of the day, there's so many marketing communications that we all get on a day-to-day basis that just simply don't land. They're not relevant. They're not what we're looking for. And I would venture to guess that if a brand really dug into the data that they have available, they would find proof that a good chunk of that audience is probably not relevant for the communication. So I love that we're having personalization conversations still. I just like to shift it to, at the end of the day, we're just trying to connect the right message to the right customer through the right channel and at the right time. And that challenge really hasn't changed at all since I started in the marketing, tech space.
Well, that's really well said. Now, let's look forward because I think the most honest version of this conversation involves naming what's going away, right? So, if we are sitting here 2 years from now, what marketing practices are we going to look back on and say, I can't believe you were still doing that?
I know. A couple things come to mind. I think the handoff between marketing and sales being manual and being something that we really have to look at and make sure that the leads that marketing qualified were picked up and acknowledged and worked by sales. Like there is so much automation in that handoff from an agentic standpoint that I really hope that we're done having those conversations 2 years from now. I hope that I don't have to talk about personalization in 2 years. I hope that we have moved past that. But then the other one that comes to mind too is like just having to maintain a manual marketing calendar. I really hope we've moved beyond that. And in order to move beyond that, we have to trust the data and we have to listen to what customers are telling us from an interaction standpoint and turn that into proactive messaging. Because if we are continuously listening to customers and we know what they're looking for and we understand that we have the right products or services to sell and we know what channels they want to hear through, we should just be able to have always on, triggered communications that are going out. And we should be able to get away from like over prescribing the campaigns that we're sending. So that's really my hope for marketers.
Absolutely. And last thing, and this is really specific, you work closely with Salesforce and the ecosystem around it. Now, when you look at agentic, where agentic workflows are heading inside the platform, where do you see the genuine opportunity over the next few years? Not the roadmap side, but what would you actually think?
I think Salesforce over the last, call it 9 months, has really prioritized innovation in agentic workflows in the Agentforce marketing product, also known as Marketing Cloud Next, also known as Marketing Cloud Growth and Advanced. And what I mean by that is, leading up to connections this year, there were already some agentic workflows specific to campaign operations. We had a campaign brief builder, we had a segment builder, they rolled out the automated workflow builder. I think those were really exciting moments for marketers. But post connections, there's some pilot capabilities that Sercante Trilliad have been lucky to be, given previews to. And two of those are the Agentforce content builder and the marketing goals builder. And these are really exciting next steps because that first release was really helpful in automating some of those planning and build processes that I had outlined. But now we're starting to get into some of the things that really took the most time. So content writing, making that content contextual and personalized for all of the individuals that are receiving the communication. That's a big one. I think that's really interesting. And the goal agent is also really interesting to be able to like go out prescriptively set the goals, track the progress against them. It's really continuing down the path of having having, if you think about that end to end campaign production process and each one of those stages of it, having agentic workflows built into the marketing cloud tool that are solving across that life cycle. So I think it's really exciting each release that they're heading down.
If you look at things from an AI standpoint, let's say 5 years down the line, as we discussed, right? What are some things you personally believe are going to change for the good or change for the bad?
It's such an interesting question because honestly, I think if you had asked me 2 years ago or 3 years ago if we would be having this conversation, I don't know that I would have believed you. I think there's a lot of good with this current era. I think the efficiency gains are really allowing people to have some space to think, to ideate, to do truly what makes humans great, to create, to think outside the box. And I applaud things that are any changes to businesses that are encouraging that kind of creativity. I think there's also an inverse, right? There's also, I don't want to use the word bad, but I think there's a cautionary tale of if we over index our thinking in AI, do we all sound the same? And it's so funny because for the longest time, I am a huge, I love a very pretty PowerPoint presentation. Like, I love a good visual. I love a good story. I have said forever, gosh, if I could just take what's in my brain and have something build me a PowerPoint deck, wouldn't that be amazing? And now I'm here. And I'm like, darn it, all these PowerPoint presentations look exactly the same, you know?
Totally relate to that, the age of agentic AI and AI itself. I feel like, whenever I write an email and use, maybe a GPT to probably help me write my email. Don't do that a lot often, but whenever I feel like that, and when I get an email from someone, it's the same thought. It just feels like me. I mean, I'm writing to myself, or is this me writing to myself? Because it's paved the way for all the messages to look very similar. And I totally resonate with what you're trying to say out here.
It is so true. I have found it to be really helpful if I have writer's block to be like, these are all my ideas. This is what I'm trying to say. Can you take a first draft? And I usually absolutely hate everything that it writes, but it gives me enough of a like, I don't want to say any of that to know exactly what I want to say. So it can kind of unblock the writer's block. But I agree with you. Like, I kind of live in fear that people read things that I put together and they're like, is this AI? Because it isn't. It's AI informed.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. And I really love your take on that question. Thank you so much for that. Now, I'd love to switch some gears, introduce a rapid fire round. That's what something we've been doing recently. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions and I need only short answers or probably one word answers, whatever comes in your mind first. So here we go. Agentic marketing operations, overhyped right now or underestimated?
Underestimated.
Okay. A CMO who still runs weekly reporting meetings in 2026, are they managing the business or are they managing their own comfort?
They're definitely managing their own comfort.
An AI agent makes a bad call that costs a campaign its budget for the quarter. Who owns that? The technology or the team that deployed it?
100% the team that deployed it.
Okay. The marketing hire that becomes hardest to justify in an agentic world: strategist, executor, or analyst?
Executor.
Amazing insights. Really enjoyed hosting on our podcast Tuesdays with Trailblazers.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. And thank you all to our audience who joined us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with MarTech Edge for more insights. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Sidesh.